Hello, and welcome to our Manga Spotlight. I'm Sarah Hunter, Books for Youth and Graphic Novels Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, I'd like to go over some technical details. Today's slide presentation and title lists were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by typing the URL on the screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions, and we'll pass along all other questions to today's panelists so they can follow up with you after the webinar. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the live transcript icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Subtitles from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Caption Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. Today, we have the pleasure of hearing from Morgana Santilli, Sales and Marketing Coordinator at Yen Press, Ingrid Lorenzi, Marketing Assistant at Yen Press, John Desposito, Publishing Sales Manager at Viz Media, Morgan Perry, Marketing Manager at Square Enix Manga and Books, and Ashley Hawkins, School Librarian and Manga Expert. We will kick things off with Morgana Santilli and Ingrid Lorenzi. Morgana is the Sales and Marketing Coordinator at Yen Press. She is a former comic shop manager and buyer and always particularly loved helping readers find their new favorite series. Other than reading manga, Morgana enjoys drinking lots of tea, snuggling with her 2 black cats, and collecting too many books for her children's personal library. Ingrid is the marketing assistant at Yen Press. A former bookseller and used book buyer at Strand Books, she is an avid fantasy reader and advocate for translated works. Aside from collecting old books and trying to win over her cat's affection, she spends her days scavenging for the best bubble tea places in the city and taking strolls in Central Park. Thanks for being here, Morgana and Ingrid. The floor is yours.
All right, thank you so much. And thank you everybody for being here today. Once again, my name is Morgana. I'm Sales and Marketing Coordinator at Yen Press, and I'm joined today by Ingrid.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Many of you are probably familiar with Yen Press. We've been publishing manga for about 16 years now, I believe. Today, we're just going to go over a few different categories of manga. We're going to talk a little bit about some kind of evergreen backlist titles, some titles that tie into upcoming anime seasons, and finally, some upcoming works that you should check out. So we could go to the next slide, please. So first up, backlist classics, evergreen titles for your collection. Next slide, please. All right. Fruits Basket seems like a manga that hardly needs an introduction. Every time I talk about it, people's eyes light up. They're like, oh my gosh, this is still available? Because Fruits Basket was very popular when I was in middle school many, many years ago. So this is one that's been around for a long time. It went out of print briefly, and we rescued it and put it into these collector's editions, which are 2-in-1 omnibuses. And I just want a little personal story. As you heard in my introduction, I used to manage a comic book store, and a young woman came in one day, and by young woman, I mean she was 13 or 14, and asked me if we had Fruits Basket. And this was before the Yen Press reprint. And I was like, where did you hear about this? This hasn't been available for like a decade. So it just goes to show that this is a series that kind of stands the test of time. It's a really wonderful shoujo story, a story geared toward a young female audience about Toru, who is an orphan who kind of finds her way into the hands of the Soma family, a mysterious family who, when members are touched by members of the opposite sex, they turn into characters of the Chinese zodiac. Next slide, please. I'm going to show you a little bit of the artwork here. So in these omnibus editions, they open with full color illustration galleries. So you can see here some of the beautiful full color art that you see upon opening the book. Next page, please, or sorry, next slide, please. And here is some of the interior art. And you can see it has that kind of classic girls manga, lots of botanicals, beautiful boys, lots of blushing. It's a really wonderful standard of the genre and of the category. So this is a wonderful series for anyone ages about 13 and up. It is complete in 12 omnibus volumes. So I think the original went 28 full volumes. These are kind of like two and one, 2.5 and one. A really wonderful series, and one that we have seen consistent success with ever since we reprinted it in, I believe, 2016. Yeah, next slide, please. All right, Ingrid, this is all you.
All right. So this just a premise. It's one of my favorite series, and it was very big in 2016, but also now. Just to give you some context, I graduated high school in 2016, and my graduation cap was decorated with this series. So yes, it is one of the most beloved that there is at Yen Press. And it's so big that it has multiple anime adaptations and movies too. But what makes it so great? Well, it is the perfect pick for the literary nerd who is looking for manga with epic fights with supernatural elements. Because where else could you find F. Scott Fitzgerald duking it out with the Japanese giant Osamu Dazai? Nowhere else, just here. And that is the big appeal of the series. It is fun to figure out which authors show up later, and also more interesting, what powers do they have. Next slide, please. So, the story just follows Atsushi, who is an orphan boy who awakens his destructive power. The art is very dynamic. You can see, for example, here, that is Atsushi. He can channel the power of a tiger, but also become one. And that is just very cool as initial setup. So after he does rescue Dazai, which along the autobiographical information, he remains a suicide lover man. Um, he then joins the detective agency, and the rest is history. Next. So, okay. There are mafia fights, criminal investigations, and also literary callouts in this series, which should be on your radar. So, if you have enjoyed The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen and My Hero Academia, then Bungo is a great choice, and we highly recommend picking this up. Okay.
Right. Next. Okay, great. So now we're going to talk a little bit about some series that tie into both the spring and summer anime seasons. We have found for sure that with a new anime, even if it's just a second or third season of an anime that's already, come out previously, we do see a rising interest, an uptick in sales, but also more people asking about it and talking about it. So next slide, please. And this is also all Ingrid.
So this is another favorite of mine, and it is very relevant at this moment. We recommend picking this title up just because there is an ongoing anime adaptation right now, and one that came after just, I'd say, 8-10 years since the last one, and it just attests to how much beloved of a series it is. Black Butler, it is a dark fantasy manga featuring a Faustian pact, criminal investigation, and some of the most gorgeous artwork that has ever graced a page. Next slide, please. So it follows Earl Ciel Phantom Hive, a very young Earl, and his demonic butler Sebastian, as they investigate the truth behind the Phantom Hive family tragedy. There are very high stakes because, Ciel just sold his soul to the devil to extract revenge on the perpetrators of the family tragedy. Of course, there are other few mysteries along the way, which bring the young Earl to interact with a diverse and memorable cast. So as this manga features torture, fantasy violence, and implied sexual violence, it is best suited for older teens. Okay, next. As you can see here, pretty gorgeous. Sebastian, he never misses. So again, we definitely recommend picking this up given the anime season currently ongoing. Next.
All right. Next up is Oshinoko. This is a series that the first season, had an anime adaptation come out last April. It was very popular and really, boosted sales of this title, which was already quite popular. There is a second season coming out this summer, in fact, and this is a really interesting series. It kind of starts out with a gynecologist, an OBGYN, who is one of his patients is one of his favorite idols, a 16-year-old musical idol, Ai Hoshino, who comes to him pregnant with twins. And this is very hush hush. Obviously, she's young, unmarried, and famous. She's pregnant with twins, and he's attending to her. And in the process of taking care of her, he leaves one night, says, tomorrow I'm going to come in. It'll probably be time for you to go into labor. And that night he is murdered. And he is reincarnated as one of the twins, along with another one of his patients, or rather a patient at the hospital he works at, not one of his patients, but another idol fan. And so the story then becomes kind of what it's like to be children of an idol for a while in there. But there's a lot of intrigue and mystery around Ai and her relationship and how she got pregnant in the first place, and also why somebody went after Goro, the gynecologist, but and also maybe somebody has it out for Ai. So you have this really intriguing story that kind of goes into two parts. There's the kind of peek into the entertainment industry and the exploration of kind of how dark it can be and how difficult. And then you also have an ongoing mystery about what is happening kind of behind closed doors, what's going on with this conspiracy against Ai. It's a really beautifully illustrated and surprising series. The covers are all very cheerful. Next slide, please. But as you can see, there's a little bit of darkness too. One of Ai's big catchphrases is lies are an idol's best friend. Her whole demeanor is I get up there in front of people and lie in order to make them happy. So there's kind of this kind of philosophical almost edge to it. Really cool series, really great. Intended for ages 16 and up. There is violence, obviously some talk of sexuality. But yes, the anime adaptation is coming this summer, the second season of the anime. We definitely expect to see a lot more interest in this series again. So definitely want to keep an eye out for. I believe 6 volumes are out currently, and it is ongoing. Next slide, please. All right, and now a couple of debuts, things that we have upcoming that you should keep an eye out for. Next slide, please. She Likes Gays But Not Me is a really interesting title. I want to preface this by saying I know that the climate in a lot of libraries right now is tense, with a lot of book banning concerns, especially with books that deal with LGBTQ issues and identity. This is definitely a title that might cause some concerns. I do want to state that it's definitely a mature title. This is an 18+ title about a high school student, June, who is gay, and he is kind of navigating his own identity while also remaining closeted from the people around him. He bumps into a classmate in Shibuya one day. Next slide, please. You can see kind of what happens in the aftermath there. He bumps into her, and she's really embarrassed. She's like, please don't tell anybody about this. She is shopping for boys love manga. She's specifically looking for manga about male romantic relationships. And of course, she does not know he is gay. So it's a very awkward situation where she's like, please keep my secret. Meanwhile, he's keeping secrets from her. Among those secrets are the fact that he is in a relationship with an adult man, which is part of the reason that this is definitely not for younger audiences. It is sexually explicit. But ultimately, this is a story about June navigating his identity and kind of dealing with the self-imposed kind of homophobia that he's living with. He has a desire to live what he thinks is a normal life. He wants to get married and have children, and in fact ends up dating this classmate that he meets one day inadvertently, trying so hard to be something that he's not. This series is complete in 3 volumes. The first one is coming out this May. It is, again, a very intense story, but I think a very important one. I have heard that it does have a positive outcome. So despite the fact that there is a lot of there are a lot of bumps along the way, June does have a good, good outcome. I've read this. I highly recommend it. It is really, really well done, very sensitively done, and very, there are a lot of queer stories out there that emphasize happiness, which I think is very important. But I think it's equally important to navigate stories that are maybe more similar to what young gay people might be experiencing in their lives. So She Likes Gays But Not Me, definitely one to approach cautiously, but if you have mature readers who might be interested in something like this, highly recommended. Next slide, please.
All right, and for our last title, instead we're looking for the summer. It is in fact the summer. It is a perfect read for the season, but it is just a very atypical Little Mermaid retelling, I'd say. What is most interesting of this manga is that the story is told not from Ariel's point of view, which in this case it would be Rio the Mermaid, but her crabby and spunky friend Jo, who might hate humans but loves her friends even more. At its inner core, A Sinner of the Deep Sea is a story about a taboo love and adventure, with a rescue mission at its initial setup. This is a series that can be enjoyed by both the young adult readers but also younger audiences because the themes of inner growth, freedom versus loyalty, and a love that transcends any barrier are discussed in a very approachable way. We also get a peek at the social class in the mermaid society, which was very interesting, and how outward appearances can impact the others see us. Finally, I cannot stress how well done the world building is done in this series. At the very beginning, there's a scene where the mermaids eat at a restaurant. And if you told me that that is actually how it is done in the mermaid world, I would believe you. So again, we recommend picking this up for the summer season. All right. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Many of these titles have digital review copies available on Edelweiss, so please do check that out. And feel free to email me if you have any questions, morgana.santilli@yenpress.com. Take care, everyone. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Morgana and Ingrid. And now we'll be joined by John Desposito. John is the publishing sales manager at Viz Media, where he works with librarians and comic shop retailers to promote and celebrate Viz Media manga. He currently lives in San Francisco and enjoys cooking, hiking, and horror films. Take it away, John.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much to Booklist for having me on their webinar today and for spotlighting manga. I'm super excited to share some of our upcoming titles for 2024. So with that, let's dive into the next slide. I wanted to start today with some recognizable brands that we have exciting new content for, and first of which is Naruto. This is Naruto Suzuki's story, the Uchiha and Heavenly Stardust, the manga. Now, first off, I'd just like to say that this one was initially pitched to me as ninja versus dinosaurs meets romance. And now for me, that's all I needed to hear to get excited. But for more context, this title is a manga adaptation of a novel of the same name. And in case you're unfamiliar with the character Suzuki, he is Naruto's best friend. It takes place years after the Great Shinobi War, when Naruto is struck with a mysterious illness. Desperate for a cure, Suzuki and his wife Sakura undertake a dangerous undercover mission to find a cure, facing the likes of ninjas and a viciously trained dinosaur along the way. With Naruto's 25th anniversary of the manga approaching, it's the perfect time to re-embrace these characters. It's complete in 2 volumes, is publishing in June of 2024, and is rated T for teen. And on the next slide, you can see that ferocious dinosaur that I mentioned coming to life here, and some of these familiar characters popping up in the story, which I think is really fun. And on the next slide is another brand that you may recognize. This is X-Men the Manga Remastered. And now I rarely pick favorites on the list, but I am just so excited for this title. It's the manga adaptation of the hit X-Men animated series that premiered in the early 90s. And if you're anything like me, the cover alone brings to mind that kind of iconic theme song. I can also hear Rogue's thick Southern drawl, and even the spunky relatability of Jubilee, who will act as our main character in this story adaptation. Now, this adaptation holds a special place in many fans' hearts. It's considered one of the best versions of X-Men ever, and I'm excited to share that it will now be released in manga form. And the timing just couldn't be better, as Disney Plus just revived the series as X-Men 97, with brand new episodes premiering in March of 2024. This manga will be complete in 2 volumes and is publishing in November 2024 and will be rated Teen Plus. And on the next slide, you can see examples of what the interior images will look like. They still have those super classic costumes that the X-Men wear in the 90s series that will be super recognizable, and I think fans will get really excited about. And on the next slide is I'm the Grim Reaper. This is another personal favorite of mine. In this story, Scarlet finds herself doomed to eternal punishment in hell for a sinful life she can't even remember. But when Satan himself offers her a deal, return to Earth and kill 1 marked sinner per day as the Grim Reaper, she absolutely jumps at the chance. Along the way, she teams up with a detective on Earth who is working a case connected to her death. This horror manga mixes action, drama, moral conflict, and even fights with Satan himself for an epic and addictive series. This volume collects episodes 1 through 16 of the popular webtoon in which I'm a Grim Reaper is based off of, along with exclusive never-before-seen content and a bonus short story as well. Plus, I should mention that this title will be in full color, which makes the artwork absolutely come alive, which you can see on the next slide here. It's complete in 4 volumes, will be publishing in September, and is rated T plus for teens a bit older. And you can see here that the color work just really comes alive, especially that kind of red color that pops up throughout. It's very reminiscent of the movie Sin City for me. Next up is Kagurabachi, which has gone completely viral over the past couple of months, becoming the best new debut to date on the Shonen Jump app and receiving a ton of fan support up to its publication, with memes, posts, TikToks, and a heap of praise resulting in a ton of anticipation for this one. It tells the story of Rakihara, a renowned swordsmith who crafted 6 enchanted blades that ended a nation's war. He hid them after the conflict, but sorcerers discovered and stole them, leaving him dead in the process. Now his son Kiharo seeks vengeance with his father's final enchanted blade to exact revenge and retrieve the swords his father forged. It's publishing in November 2024 and is rated Teen Plus. And on the next slide, you can see some of the really action-packed artwork, interesting panels, and kind of that blade and swordsmanship coming to life on the page here, which I think is really cool. And then our next title is Trillion Game. This story reflects on 2 childhood best friends. One is a sweet talker and the other a timid computer programmer. And they're on a quest to become trillionaires. From their initial meeting to the founding of their company, Trillion Game, the narrative depicts this ruthless journey. It combines buddy comedy with action manga elements and shares the duo's pursuit of their $1 trillion goal. With tons of humor and well-developed characters, I find it really reminiscent of shows like Silicon Valley or Mythic Quest. And speaking of the cinematic feel, Because of the success of the Japanese live action series, which aired on Netflix, which you can still access today, an anime and film adaptation have been announced as well. So there's lots of exciting things coming for this title. It's publishing in September 2024 and is rated M for mature. And on the next slide, you can see some of the interiors coming to life. You can maybe guess which one is the sweet talker and which one is more of the timid computer programmer here. I think this will make for a really exciting title. Next up is Last Quarter. This is a supernatural mystery about two lovers separated by death from Ai Yazawa, who's the best-selling creator of both Nana and Neighborhood Story. In this story, Hataro, who's injured in a car accident while searching for her lost cat, encounters a friendly high school girl apparition in her hospital dreams. Upon her recovery, Hataro and friends embark on a quest to uncover the mysterious figure's story, leading to a tale of stranded love beyond their comprehension. This will be a deluxe paperback with color illustration gallery. It'll be complete in 2 volumes, publishing in September 2024, and is rated T+ for teens a bit older. And on the next slide, you can see the interiors here. It has that really kind of romantic feel to it. You can see the longing in these 2 apparitions' eyes here. It has a really nice musical element to it, as well as one of the male protagonists is a musician. And I think this one is just really kind of magical, ethereal, and romantic that I think a lot of fans will connect with. And next up, we have Hirayasame. After developing an unlikely friendship with a grouchy old granny who lives in his neighborhood, Hiroto suddenly finds himself inheriting not just her house, but some rather difficult emotions as well. This is a really wonderful and comforting slice of life title that explores the challenges of grief and uncertainty through one man's positive approach to life. It's really perfect for fans of manga like Insomniacs After School and Kubu Won't Meet Be Invisible. It kind of has this really quiet literary feel to it that I think is really special. It's publishing in May 2024 and is rated T for teen. On the next slide, you could kind of see that kind of quietness in the manga itself, where I think this one really shines is in its story and its emotional heart. Just kind of going through the grief process and experiencing that as a 20-something. On the next page, we have our title After God, which has some of my absolute favorite illustrations, which I'll keep you in suspense for just a moment while I tell you about the plot. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic Japan overrun by gods, where anti-God researchers grapple with the devastation left behind. They're determined to save humanity from the wrath of the divine invaders. He encounters a high schooler whose involvement could alter the course of history. You can dive into this captivating sci-fi tale reminiscent of Hell's Paradise as they navigate the world consumed by death and destruction. It's publishing in November 2024, is rated T+ for teens a bit older. And on the next slide, you can see some of those interiors that I was mentioning, which have this really haunting and almost gruesome feel to it, while still kind of, I think, feeling a bit ethereal. And I think that makes this one kind of complex in a really special way. And our next title is Alley, a Junji Ito story collection. This is from the horror master manga Junji Ito. The title story tells the tale of a young man who hears children playing outside of his boarding house every night. But the alley below his window is fenced off from the world. What secrets lies within the stains of the alley's walls? That's the question that our main protagonist is kind of contemplating. The title story Alley and several other stories of Junji Ito are included in the anime series Junji Ito Japanese Tales of the Macabre, which is now streaming on Netflix. So you can get a sneak peek of what this story is like there. And you can expect Junji Ito's classic scary stories and haunting illustrations that fans have come to love from this multiple Eisner Award winner. It's publishing in July 2024, is complete in 1 volume, and is rated T+ for teens a bit older. And on the next page, you can see those kind of classic Junji Ito haunting images come to life. I think the one in particular here with the tendrils coming out of the women's mouth kind of speaks to how scary and terrifying Junji Ito's illustrations can be. And on the next slide, I'm excited to point out some of our Mangaka Spotlight titles. We wanted to call attention to some of the titles that we're releasing this year that spotlight some of our most prolific manga creators. In the past year, we saw genuine interest in getting to know the creators of fan favorite manga creators, thanks in part to titles like Tatsuki Fujimoto's Before Chainsaw Man. Now, while most manga creators tend to be rather private, I'm excited that we are now getting to share a deeper look into who they are and their creative processes. First up, we have Uncanny, The Origins of Fear. This is the first autobiography from the most important horror manga artist of our time, Junji Ito. It not only covers his debut story, Tomi, iconic works like Uzumaki, but also reflects on influences from his childhood, thoughts on manga, character design, craftsmanship, and much more. Then we have Wanted, Akira Oto, Before One Piece. Here, the creator of One Piece presents a unique collection of his earliest works, from Western to fantasy to ghost hunting to Romance Dawn, which is the one-shot that would later become the international hit One Piece. And rounding out our mangaka spotlights, we have Kohoyaharo Gotage, Before Demon Slayer, Kimetsu no Yaiba. This action-packed collection of standalone stories showcases sinister visions of supernatural and includes stories that was the direct inspiration for the worldwide sensation Demon Slayer. So kind of just really seeing where our manga creators are coming from and discovering their origin story, which we're really hopeful that fans will connect with and want to seek out more and learn more about their creators. And for my last slide, I just wanted to point out that we've heard a lot of feedback from retailers and from librarians alike who have been looking for more 3-in-1 editions from us. And so we're really happy to present 2 new titles in our 3-in-1 series this year, the first of which being Haiku, which is a super popular underdog story set in the world of high school and volleyball. And the next step is Red River. This one has been out of publication for some time, so we're really excited to bring it back. And it's been just receiving a ton of fanfare, just hearing that it's coming back into publication, and we're happy to do that in a 3-in-1 edition, as these offer the same great content as a single volume edition, but at 50% of the price and 2/3 of the shelf space. And that's it for me today. So thank you so much for having me, Booklist, and I hope you enjoyed our titles coming out in 2024.
Thank you so much, John. Our next presenter will be Morgan Perry. Morgan is the marketing manager for Square Enix Manga and Books, where she develops the marketing strategies, execution, and implementation for the book publishing division in collaboration with Penguin Random House and Square Enix Japan. Prior to joining Square Enix, Morgan was the brand manager of editorial for Skybound Entertainment, where she collaborated in overseeing the marketing and sales strategies for the company's comic book and graphic novel releases, including the self-launch of Skybound's partnership with Hasbro. Morgan was also a key player on the sales team at Boom Studios from 2017 through 2021. You can find Morgan on social media, where she shares her publishing insights and her love of comics, manga, and anime. She's still surprised no one has figured out she's just 3 possums in a coat with a caffeine addiction. Welcome, Morgan.
Hi, everyone. Thank you guys so much for joining us for the Manga Spotlight. My name is Morgan Perry, and we may have communicated previously in my past lives, either at Skybound or Boom Studios, but I'm here today to introduce you to Square Enix Manga and Books and showcase some must-have titles as their new marketing manager. Next slide. But first, a little bit of background on Square Enix. Headquartered in Japan, Square Enix is best known as the gaming powerhouse behind Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest, but as Japan's #5 publisher, Square Enix has also been the home to unforgettable stories from a variety of talented creators through Gangan Magazine, which was established in 1991, and its various imprints, which include Gangan Comics Joker and the Manga Up app. Many of these titles were licensed into English previously by our pals at Viz, Kodansha, and Yen Press. Next slide. But in 2019, the book publishing division was established as their North American English published vertical, better known as Square Enix Manga and Books, debuting their first English language title release, A Man and His Cat, in February of 2020. And since then, Square Enix Manga and Books has quickly become the #6 ranked manga publisher in North America. Next slide. What I love about Square Enix Manga and Books is their dedication to readership through a highly curated slate of titles that offer a variety of unforgettable stories for every type of reader. And that is clear from the lineup of their top performing titles. Next slide. Whether it's My Dress-Up Darling, a spicy rom-com between a loner boy with a talent for sewing and his flashy female classmate who has a love of anime and gaming, they find themselves on common ground with a love of cosplay. Next slide. Or it could be The Apothecary Diaries, where Mao Mao, a palace servant with apothecary training, uses her quick thinking and wit to save the lives of the imperial heirs and accidentally finds herself in a world of potion brewing and mystery solving. Next slide. Or it could be My Happy Marriage, a Cinderella-esque slow burn historical romantasy set in a time period reminiscent of the Meiji Ueisho era of Japan, which would have a little bit of a paranormal twist, and it's really awesome. Next slide. But maybe it's just a sweet and hilarious story about a lonely older pianist who finds companionship in a pet shop kitten that nobody seemed to want in A Man and His Cat. And while our top performers have proven success with fans and media adaptation, my goal is to be your guide, informing you about the upcoming titles that are gaining heat with readers in Japan so that you can provide your patrons with a wide selection of manga for every type of reader. Next slide. So let's talk about what should be on your radar. Next slide. Let's start with a big one and one of my top manga recommendations of all time, Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You. Next slide. This is a story about an unlikely friendship and maybe more sparking between an overworked salaryman named Sasaki, who has two joys in life, smoking and seeing the smile of his favorite supermarket cashier, and the snarky yet stylish Tayama, who might be someone he already knows. Next slide. Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You was one of the most anticipated English releases of the last year, and it was able to find an audience through the author's immense Twitter following, which is where the series originally got its start. Next slide. Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You Volume 1 is perfect for fans of My Dress-Up Darling and Motakoi Love is Hard for Otaku, and it is available now and as an ongoing series with 4 volumes solicited so far. Next slide. Next is The Villainess's Guide to Not Falling in Love, Volume 1. An emerging trend within the isekai genre is the reincarnated villainous genre, which features a woman who's been reincarnated as the female love rival in an otome game, better known as a dating sim. Next slide. Based on a hit award-winning web novel with 9 volumes out in Japan so far, The Villainess's Guide to Not Falling in Love stars Luciana, an ordinary woman who finds herself reincarnated inside her favorite otome game, in which she knows all of the impending plot twists and catastrophes that are about to happen. Next slide. So with that in mind, she's determined to just live her best life, enjoying her new life, avoiding troublesome suitors, enjoying all the great snacks and the perks of being a villainess. But surprise, these persistent men just can't take the hint. So she's having to fight them off, and she can't, can a magical girl just catch a break every once in a while? She just wants to have snacks and live her best life. Next slide. The Villainess's Guide to Not Falling in Love, Volume 1 is available now, and it's best suited for readers 16 and up who are fans of The Apothecary Diaries and My Life as a Villainess, but it has a little bit of a touch of Nimona in there, so if you've got some new manga readers that are trying to figure out the genre, this might be a good starter one for them as well. Next slide. Also available now, we have Victoria's Electric Coffin by Akuno Tajima. Next slide. This 3-volume series is the perfect starter manga for preteen and teen readers 13 and up who are fans of historical shonen manga like Moriarty and the Patriot and Demon Slayer. And sorry, my cat has joined us for the presentation. And it is a unique and wholesome take on Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and may appeal to fans of the Enola Holmes graphic novels as well. Next slide. Victoria's Electric Coffin stars David, a boy accused of terrible crimes and murder who finds himself on death row, and Victoria Frankenstein, a 13-year-old medical doctor who offers him the ability to change his life after death through the use of her new invention, the electric coffin. Next slide. Can Victoria and David help people with her electric coffin? And will David's new life be enough for him to overcome the darkness from his past? Victoria's Electric Coffin is out now. Next slide. So we have a hard pivot into our first upcoming series arriving in May, Mobsters in Love by Chiyoko Origami. This is solidly for readers 16 and up who are fans of slow burn workplace rom-coms like Cherry Magic with a little bit of a Yakuza twist. So if you've got some fans of The Way of the House Husband or the Yakuza's Bias, this might be a great one to give to them. So next slide. Akihiro has been hopelessly in love for years with his boss, who just happens to be the top dog of the Sawatari mob. That's fine, right? Next slide. We're going to find out. Just, oops. As a trusted subordinate, Akihiro is subject to the oblivious head honcho's unintended acts of seduction, and with his position in the group at stake, revealing his infatuation is definitely a daily struggle. Next slide. So stuck between duty and his feelings, this wholesome boys love rom-com is perfect for fans of tough boys with big feelings. Mobsters in Love Volume 1 is Mobsters in Love. This is Volume 1. It is a 3-volume series arriving in May. Next slide. Our next manga of the presentation is another hard pivot from the previous ones that I think is going to be incredibly important for you to have on your shelves, just like Mona Lisa. Next slide. What if people were born without gender and then later decided on their desired gender on their own at the age of 12? Next slide. For 18-year-old Hanase, this has never really been an issue until they have been, living their life really content without having a gender until their two best friends, a bubbly girl named Ritsu and a thoughtful boy named Shiori, both confess their feelings on the same day. And while romance has never really been on Hanase's mind, how are they expected to respond to both of these acts of confession? Next slide. Just like Mona Lisa from Sumuji Yoshimura dives into the concept of growing into adulthood and identity in ways that we're just kind of now starting to see in manga through titles like Boys Run the Riot, Blue Flag, and Is Love the Answer? And with its non-binary lead and original blue color inclusions to uplift the storytelling, Just Like Mona Lisa is already receiving high praise from manga news outlets and will be arriving July 16th. Next slide. So I'm going to kick off some of our fall manga releases with Always a Catch, How I Punched My Way into Marrying a Prince. Next slide. Always a Catch is a shoujo series starring a lead who doesn't wait around to be saved. She will do the butt kicking herself, and girl, respect. Next slide. With the original story and illustrations by Meo Momoyo and Itsuki Mito with art by Kaki Nagato, this zany rom-com adapts a hit web novel turned print novel about a duke's daughter who's more of a fighter than a lady, so much so that she ends up wooing the prince with her martial arts prowess. He is hella into her skills. Next slide. This manga is perfect for the romantasy fanatics of all ages who love The Apothecary Diaries and My Happy Marriage, and it will be available in November on the 26th. Next slide. Closing out our presentation is one of my personal favorites coming this fall, Dragon and Chameleon by Ryo Ishiyama. When a veteran manga creator, next slide. When a veteran manga creator inexplicitly switches bodies with his jealous assistant, he will have to claw his way back to the spotlight as a no-name aspiring artist. Next slide. This is the first full-length series from Ryo Ishiyama, former assistant who cut his teeth on the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump, to the assistant of Eiichiro Oda on the global hit One Piece, and was the winner of the UNEX Prize for Print Manga in 2023's Next Manga Award. Dragon and Chameleon is art about art, providing readers with an inside look at the manga industry through a dramatized lens. Next slide. Perfect for fans of Blue Period, Look Back, and Bakuman, Dragon and Chameleon will be a powerhouse hit with readers, I guarantee it, and it's going to be out in November. Next slide. And that's all for me. We're in the process of building our librarian communication and outreach. So if you'd like to receive a newsletter, communication, or keep in touch, please reach out to me via email, and we'll be sure to follow us on social media as we ramp up that content. We'd love to find ways to collaborate with you. Next slide. We are Square Enix. And final slide, Uncover Unforgettable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Morgan. Our final presentation today will come from Ashley Hawkins. Ashley is a school librarian with expertise in collection development and student-centered librarianship. A school librarian in Brooklyn and adjunct professor for Queens College GSLIS, she has written for multiple publications, including Booklist. Currently, she is in the process of working on a book in collaboration with Julie Stivers, Sarah Smith, Emily Radica, and Sybil Munatour on the use of manga in school libraries. She is a reviewer for Booklist and a Knowledge Quest blogger, as well as writing for her own blog, Manga Librarian. Ashley has presented at multiple conferences, including ALA, and has been a guest on multiple podcasts. Her work's main goal is to ensure that every student has access to books they love, particularly manga, light novels, and manhwa, and to help librarians who need support in developing those collections to make decisions that maximize access. Thank you for being here today, Ashley. The floor is yours.
Great. Okay, so today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about you've just heard about all these really awesome titles. How do you make decisions about adding them to your collection, including them in your collection, getting them to your students or your patrons? And so that's what we're going to talk about. Next slide. So first thing that I always tell people when they are initiating bringing manga into their collection is put it in your collection development policy. So the very first thing you should do is commit to purchasing manga. Put the fact that you're going to purchase manga, and not just manga, other alternative forms, alternative formats, such as manhwa, light novels, even audiobooks. This can go pretty wide, but especially when it's a format that you are maybe just beginning to learn about and add, but you know that your patrons are thirsty and hungry for, you want to maybe include it into your collection development policy, which is going to loop back to my third point that I'm going to make. You want it in your collection development policy for other reasons other than just reminding yourself. I am somebody who's always thinking about manga, but I think this is a good reminder for librarians who maybe aren't always thinking about manga, who know they need to buy manga, but maybe, you know, they have all these other things that kind of filter in. For me, I have to be reminded to maybe buy some other things, like certain sections of nonfiction. So, you know, keep those things in mind. Also use the same selection criteria you use for other formats. And I'm going to talk more in depth about this on the next slide. But remember that manga is not a genre. Manga is a format. And so we need to think about it as just another way of looking at stories. And therefore, you're basically going to look at any book the same way you would look at any other book. And then finally, be prepared to defend your collection. We know from the data that exists that graphic formats are more vulnerable to censorship, and we also want to avoid self-censoring unnecessarily. I'm sorry, my cat is now interrupting. The reality is that for many people who are not generally manga readers, they will often have a preset mindset about what manga is. But as you may have seen from the wide swath of stories that you've just been introduced to, if you are not already a manga reader, manga has a wide variety. So don't avoid buying manga because you are afraid that it's going to open you up to censorship or open you up to challenges. Making sure that you have manga in your collection development policy and that you are following the same selection criteria that you use for other formats will protect you from those type of things. So next slide. What are my selection criteria? So I come from an interesting background. I previously was a high school librarian. This year I moved down to elementary school, but my selection criteria are still the same. So first off, I look for readability. How readable is it to the audience that I have at my school as a school librarian? This also would apply for a branch as well. So, you know, my students at my particular school, they are primarily, it's a 3K through 5 school right now. So I really love, for example, Polar Bear Cafe. But Polar Bear Cafe is probably not a great selection for my kids because Polar Bear Cafe has all these wonderful, amazing puns inside of it. And the majority of my kids are 3K through second grade, and they are not quite at a reading level yet to comprehend all of those amazing, wonderful puns, even if they are going to enjoy the pictures of animals that are kind of within. Maybe if I had more of an upper grade elementary, then I might purchase Polar Bear Cafe, but I go a different direction. I buy more Pandania, things like yokai cats, and I buy a lot of Pokemon. I buy things that are a bit more on the readability level. And also age relevance. I look to how relevant is it to my readers. There are some things that are rated all ages, but they may not necessarily be relevant to, you know, a second grader. They may pick it up and they'll look at it, but it's not going to spark their interest. And that's something to keep in mind. Sometimes when we talk about like these titles that have adult characters having adult lives, keeping that in mind for our middle school and high school readers, just keeping that in mind. Current readers, looking at your current readers and saying like, what are y'all into? What are you asking for? What's the hot anime that you're looking at? And so looking at also, this kind of plays into looking at what is the upcoming anime. What are you asked? Like when I was in high school, kids were always coming at me like, Miss, I'm watching this. Do you have this? So I was always trying to stay on top of, okay, what's coming out next season? What's coming out 2 seasons from now? You can find out that information. And when you can stay on top of that information, you can at least have first volumes, unless of course it hasn't been licensed yet, but usually manga publishers know, and it's all a cycle now. We're in a good time right now. It's not like the olden days. And then of course I look at what needs are being met. So this doesn't play into it as much at the elementary level because unfortunately there aren't as many children's titles as there used to be. There aren't as many children's titles as there are in Japan, although I will say Yen Press is currently publishing children's light novels that are doing extremely well with my older readers who are in 4th and 5th grade. And I highly recommend them. But I would look a lot at the needs met, and this also would tie into representation as well. Looking at what do my students need in terms of socio-emotional learning, what do they need in terms of even standards and things like that. Next slide. The other big thing you really need to do is know what you're buying. Don't just buy blindly. Purchase with intent and knowledge of what it is you're buying. If you're not a manga reader, do what you do for other acquisitions you're less passionate about. Read reviews and consult expert lists. Not only are those options, but the publishers do provide age guidelines for their titles. So I have a whole stack of manga right here from all 3 of our publishers who presented today, and they all have age ranges. These all are in older teen range. Actually, some of them were talked about today. So I have Smoking in the Supermarket with You. All of them have the age ranges. This is something that you don't get with regular books. Also, check reviews. Check all of your professional resources. And just, you can also check what goes into those age guidelines. One thing that Yen Press does that I am eternally impressed with is they not only say like it's for older teen, they tell you why it's for older teen. So it says It has letters, and those letters indicate like what's inside there. So there may be language, there may be sexual content. This can be a clear indicator to you so that you can determine according to your collection development policy. Also, I have a giant wakelet of every manga resource I can provide that is housed within my website. Feel free to use it. I'm not the only person who reviews and talks about manga. There are a lot of people now. And yeah, let's go to the next slide. So where you can find my reviews and my work. First off, I do a lot of reviews for Booklist. I try to pitch as much as I can. If I have access to it, I pitch it. So if I can get galleys of it, or if I'm already buying it, I try to review it. Anything that I can't fit in on Booklist, I am trying to get in on my website, mangalibrarian.com. And I'm also going to be publishing a book within the next year in collaboration with other librarians. It's called Manga Goes to School, Cultivating Engagement and Inclusion in K-12 Settings. And it's going to include collection development advice such as this, but also lesson plans and all sorts of amazing goodies. And that is with Emily Radica, Sarah Smith, who is another Booklist reviewer, and Julie Stivers and Sybil Monitore. And yeah, that is where you can find me. That is everything. I know I threw a lot of information at you all at once, but I am always available on the internet and available for any librarian to access me. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, random wants or needs, if you really need a review of something, you can always reach out to me and I will review it. So that is, I think, it from me.
Thank you so much, Ashley. That was super helpful. And a huge thank you to all of today's wonderful panelists. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, slide presentation, title list, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Staff training, in-services, local conference, Booklist can help. You can now request free copies of Booklist and Booklist Reader for upcoming staff training programs so you can help the next generation of library workers become readers advisory and collection development superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen, visit our website, or email info@booklistonline.com for more details. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. A huge thank you to our panelists, especially Ashley Hawkins, and to our sponsors, Yen Press, Viz Media, and Square Enix Books and Manga. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.